Gavin Newsom is facing scrutiny. Looking at the LA wildfires that have been ravaging the state of California, you could see the mayor of LA, Karen Bass, and Gavin Newsom basically failed to pretty much prevent this from happening. If you see, look at the damage that has occurred in the state. The former president actually said back in 2019, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has done a terrible job of forest management. I told him from the first day we met that he must clean the forest floors regardless of what his bosses, the environmentalists, demand of him. Must also do burns and cut fire stoppers. Every year as the fires rage in California burns, it is the same thing, and then he comes to the federal government for more money. No more. Get your act together, Governor. You don't see close to the level of burn in other states, but our teams are working well together in putting these many fires out. Great firefighters also open up the ridiculously closed water lanes coming down from the north. Don't pour it into the Pacific Ocean. Should be done immediately. California desperately needs water, and you can have it now. And we can see here, when asked why there is no water to fight the fires, Gavin Newsom told Anderson Cooper, look, the local folks are just going to have to figure it out. And despite all of that, he's still the favorite, or at least is now tied to be the Democrat nominee in the latest betting odds, with Josh Shapiro also at 12% as of right now, who I also think is a very overrated candidate at this point in time. So looking at the Republican primary, J.D. Vance is doing pretty well. He's sitting at 43%. He's got a much larger plurality of the share than Gavin or Josh Shapiro both do. So looking at the hypothetical matchup, we're going to be looking at a Vance versus Gavin Newsom matchup. We can see the 2024 election results here. By the way, my new margins are 0-2 for tilt, 2-6 for lean, and 6-12 for likely. And then anything above 12 points is basically in the safe category. So looking at all of these states, we can see over here, Utah about a 25-point win, Idaho coming around here at about 39 points. A lot of the, red, Appalachian, Great Plains states. We could see Kansas, Oklahoma also in this column. Vance basically improves in every single state in the country from 2024. So he overperforms Donald Trump's performance in the Electoral College. Iowa comes in as about an 18.3 percentage point win, basically 5 points more Republican than the last matchup. We also see in the state of Ohio, 11 points last time. Here it comes out as an 18.7 percentage point win. So a pretty big shift to the right, one of the bigger shifts in the country. Florida, a 19.3 percentage point win for J.D. Vance. In the state of Texas, 16.2%. So clearly you see a 6-point improvement for J.D. Vance in the state of Florida, and about a 3-point improvement for J.D. in Texas. So really, really interesting stuff here. If we look at Maine second, we'd see that's safe, Alaska, that's safe. So that gives Vance just outright out of the gate 219 Electoral College votes in the safe column. Gavin wins the state of California by 18, which is a 2-point underperformance from Harris's win in the state. And Washington is actually about a 4-point loss for Gavin here. We actually see, well, not a loss of 4 points, but he loses 4 points compared to Kamala Harris's performance. About a 14-point win, but still over 12 points. So it is in the safe category. Hawaii, an 18-point win for Gavin Newsom. We see here was a 23-point win for Harris last time. It shifted about 6 points to the right from 2020, and it's been trending to the right quite recently for a long time. And so I expected to probably go under 20 points in the 2024 cycle, given the circumstances at hand. Vermont comes in at about 26 points, so about a 5-point loss for Gavin in the state compared to Kamala Harris's margin. Massachusetts comes in at about 23 points, so about a 2-point underperformance for Gavin in the state. And we see Maryland at just 20 points, which is a humongous underperformance for Gavin in the state of Maryland. And that's because the black vote in this hypothetical matchup, I actually have shifting to the right the most out of any voting block. So you're going to see the South and some northeastern areas really move in the Republican column. College white voters only shift right by like 1.5 points. And so you're going to see states like Oregon, Colorado, they're going to shift right because the non-college white vote shifts Republican by about 2 to 4 points, but it's not going to shift as much as the eastern part of the country. And you're going to see the Northeast really develop into sort of a battleground type area. Georgia, 7.7 percentage point win, about a 5-point overperformance for JD Vance compared to Donald Trump's margin here. You could see Vance would do a little bit better in the rurals, but would improve massively in the city of Atlanta and some of the suburbs surrounding Atlanta. North Carolina also coming in at a pretty hefty margin, about 9.6%. So over a 6-point improvement in the state of North Carolina. We also see in Arizona, the state is about a 9.6 percentage point win. Last time it was about 5.5. So you see that there as well. Nevada, a 3.1 percentage point win in the last election, now 9.9. So really big improvements here as he continues to gain with Hispanic voters from Trump's performance. We also see in the state of Wisconsin about a 7.7 percentage point win, so a 7-point shift to the right. Those wild counties would not really like Gavin Newsom at all. He'd also significantly overperform in the western part of the state as well. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Looking at some other states like Michigan, only a 1.4 percentage point win last time, is a 7.6 win this time around, as well as in the state of Pennsylvania, 8-point win, which is the biggest shift in the Rust Belt, actually, I'm pretty sure. Well, actually, the biggest shift is Wisconsin, funny enough. I think somebody like a Vance would do better in a state like Wisconsin for the most part. I also forgot to put Maine's first in the safe column for Gavin Newsom. Looking at the likely states, Oregon comes in at just about 9 points for Gavin Newsom. A very bad performance in the state for him. I mean, Harris won it by 14. That's a 5-point underperformance. The non-college vote shifting to the right is definitely going to make an effect on that. Same thing in Colorado. Only a 7.1 percentage point win, almost a 4-point underperformance in the state for Gavin. Hispanic and basically Hispanic and non-college white voters kind of shift the state a couple points in that direction. We'd also see in a place like Connecticut, you only have roughly about a 7.9 percentage point win in the state of Connecticut when it was about 14 last time. So that's almost a 7-point shift in that direction. Delaware, a 14.7 percentage point win in the state, is merely now just about a 9-point win. So definitely a big shift. And we see here, for example, in the state of, I think that's it for all of the, likely states for both parties, believe it or not. Yes, Illinois and New York do actually fall under 6 points in this hypothetical matchup due to the black vote shifting massively into the Republican column. JD Vance in this matchup doesn't have any 2 to 6 point wins on the map, but Gavin Newsom has quite a few. New York is in that column at about 4.8 percentage points. Illinois comes in at about 5.2 percentage points for Gavin Newsom. The Appalachian part of the state, you could see this part down here, the margins would just get really strong for JD, and you would see some improvements in the outer suburbs of Illinois, and you would see Cook County get very, very competitive. I actually think it would go down to about 30 points for Gavin in this hypothetical matchup, which would bring the state down to a pretty low level of a margin for Gavin. New York is the same thing. I think that JD would continue to improve in New York City compared to Donald Trump. And I think that maybe you could say that Gavin makes some gains in the northern part of the state, but really this part of the state, the city, is definitely going to be making a turn to the right as all of the disasters, like all of the crime, has been going on. And the political persecution of Donald Trump is not going to really help them out either. And in Rhode Island, you actually see that drop to just about a 5-point win. The state actually shifted a lot to the right this time and voted to the right of both Delaware and Connecticut because it has a significantly higher Hispanic vote than the other two states. And so that would definitely play a part into the victory, or at least it getting more competitive for JD. It's only about a 5.9 percentage point win. So almost stays in the likely column, but it does not quite stay in that column right now. We see in the state of New Mexico, 1.3 percentage point win for JD Vance. In Minnesota, he ends up flipping that state by 1.1%. Virginia, a 0.3 percentage point win. Nebraska's second congressional district, 0.3% as well. In the state of New Hampshire, you got about a 1.3 percentage point win as well. So very similar to the win in the state of New Mexico, which is really, really interesting. And Minnesota follows shortly after. And then we see Maine at large is about a 0.5 percentage point win for JD. So that's also another flip on the map. And that's actually a state that shifts the most to the right out of a lot of these states. I mean, Harris won it by 6.9%, but the Republican registrations get better there. It's becoming less white educated, less college educated. So that's definitely going to play a factor into the shift in the state, especially with the popular vote shifting to the right so much and somebody like a Vance really going out there and doing very well at the national level. And New Jersey flipping by 0.2% in this hypothetical matchup here. So you see that all the tilt states 0 to 2 point wins on the map. When all is said and done, J.D. Vance wins 361 electoral college votes to Gavin's 177 in the electoral college as of right now. This is not final. Things could definitely change. More than likely, I actually expect Josh Shapiro to probably overtake Gavin in the betting odds. So when that happens, I'll have to do another matchup. And I actually think that, yes, Josh Shapiro probably performs a little bit better than Gavin Newsom, but not significantly better, guys. The whole fact that he is Jewish is definitely not going to help him with some parts of the Democrat and Republican base. He is a significantly short guy, so that's also not going to really help him at all. He's only about 5'4", 5'5", and on top of that, he's got a lot of skeletons in his closet as the governor of the state of Pennsylvania, including ruling somebody's death as a suicide, in which the incident in which this person was murdered essentially would have been classified as a suicide instead of actually a murder. And this person who did it was technically Josh Shapiro's friend, allegedly. And then on top of that, you have a scenario where there's an Amish farmer where essentially Josh Shapiro went after the family for basically, there's a whole corporate system trying to control all of these independent farmers, and he's basically had all his stuff taken away from him. And the Amish vote definitely delivered Trump the win in the state of Pennsylvania this time around. And so essentially, if Josh Shapiro's margin in the state of Pennsylvania drops significantly from what it was in 2022, or he loses the governorship, he basically has no chance in winning the primary. And so at that point, if Gavin can't win it or Josh Shapiro can't win it, Kamala Harris could actually potentially come up as a frontrunner, or even John Fetterman or Wes Moore. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this, and I will see you guys in the next video.